Will One Punch Man Season 3 look good? Let's try and figure it out using everything we've seen and heard so far. I know it's a show there's no shortage of YouTube videos about, including on this very channel, but let's talk about it some more because why not? Let's talk about the new full-length trailer, let's talk about the staff and the production line in charge, and most importantly, let's talk about what we can realistically expect from it. Just for the record, I'll fully accept the milking allegations. I am rinsing the fuck out of this show because it gets views. But hey, the least I can do is reassure you that this video will be more than just me reiterating how messed up this production is behind the scenes for what is it, the 15th time now? Don't get me wrong, it is messed up behind the scenes, but that's not all I'll focus on this time around. Hopefully this video ends up being more constructive and informative and less depressing. Let's get to it. Make sure to subscribe, I'll gladly reiterate that for the 15th time. It helps out a lot and well, it helps out a lot, do it. You can also become a member of this channel. Members get at least 2 exclusive videos per month such as these ones here, custom badges and emojis, shoutouts and more. Just go down there and press the join button. So let's get the trailer breakdown out of the way first, mainly because there's not much to go through. The trailer looked good in a vacuum, it didn't have any real movement, but the drawings looked surprisingly solid with liberal use of thick outlines, vibrant colors, and even a kagenashi or shadowless shot. Cool stuff. If they can maintain this level of art throughout the season, which I understand is a difficult task, I'd go as far as to call this show polished. Besides that, the lack of movement was a bit depressing. Outside of this one shot with some bouncy character acting, there was no real animation, but it wasn't bad. Of course, it was a bit upsetting to see them straight up reuse a background from season 1, a particularly poor looking one at that, but it was fine overall. The elephant in the room, however, was the complete absence of any action scenes in this trailer for an action anime. They did not show a single action cut, and I highly doubt it's due to a lack of trying. Promoting an action anime by showcasing the fights is marketing 101, everyone knows that. Why did the trailer not contain any action scenes then? Well, I'm afraid I have bad news. I've been told by my Twitter followers that the trailer exclusively showed scenes from the first episode and maybe the second episode, and these episodes didn't have any action in them. What does that mean? That means they probably don't have any footage to show from the latter episodes, which is of course extremely concerning. And that was the trailer, a solid effort all around, but one that ultimately begs the question, will this season look good? Will it live up to expectations or will it fully fall apart? Let's try to answer those questions, but before we do, I think it's important for us to take a quick look at how Studio jcstaff functions as a company, which I know isn't the thrilling content you expect from anime YouTube, but it is what it is. I'll try to make it as interesting, scratch that, as less boring as possible. As many of you may know, an animation studio is rarely one unified entity, and this is especially true for major studios like jcstaff. By major studios, I mean companies that have a lot of people under its umbrella. Major studios like jcstaff usually contain multiple sub-studios and production lines, each with their own directors, animators, and producers. Bones has sub-studios A through F, MAPPA has multiple production lines, that's just how big studios operate. As for jcstaff, the studio has 3 or 4 production lines depending on how you look at it. You have the Atsushi Fujishiro line, this is the one in charge of One Punch Man Season 3. You have the Kaoru Suzuki line, this is the one usually in charge of the action-heavy shows the studio produces like the Danmachi series, Eden Zero, Tsukimichi, and the currently airing 9999 Gacha thing. If you're wondering why the line known for handling action-heavy shows isn't handling the action-heavy One Punch Man, they didn't handle Season 2 either, that's just the way it is. You also have the Kosuke Matsuo line and the Koji Okada line, although the latter hasn't produced a show in years now. More about these production lines, they have multiple production teams within them and are capable of handling multiple projects at the same time in parallel. Also, this production line arrangement doesn't mean there's no staff intermixing, there very much is. It's just a broad categorization of jcstaff's manpower. Animator Kenichiro Aoki, for example, he is usually heavily involved with Suzuki productions like Danmachi and Eden Zero, but it is all but confirmed that he'll be heavily involved with One Punch Man, a Fujishiro project. Stuff like that happens all the time. With all that being said, the production line we need to focus on is the one led by Atsushi Fujishiro, although, and this is a bit of a tangent, up until earlier this year, some of us were speculating about One Punch Man potentially being handed over to Kaoru Suzuki's action specialist line, and this wasn't just blind cope and wishful thinking on our part, we had our reasons. You see, at the time, the only staff members from Season 3 known to us were character designers Chikashi Kubota, Ryosuke Shirakawa, and Shinjiro Kuroda, and out of those 3, Shirakawa and Kuroda, especially the latter, had been involved with Kaoru Suzuki shows before, which led us to believe that maybe, just maybe, they switched production lines. Well, we were wrong, it's still Fujishiro leading the charge as confirmed by the man himself in an interview published on the studio's website. Anyway, Atsushi Fujishiro's production line is an interesting one mainly due to the sheer volume of stuff it produces. To put things in perspective, One Punch Man Season 3 was announced back in 2022 and since then has a list of every single show Fujishiro has been an animation producer for. Ready? Here goes. The Strongest Sage with the Weakest Crest, Requiem of the Rose King, In Another World with My Smartphone Season 2, Sacrificial Princess and the King of Peace, Reign of the Seven Spellblades. Chilling in Another World with My Level 2 Super Cheat Powers, 2.5-dimensional Seduction, The Stories of Girls Who Couldn't Be Magicians, The Do-Over Damsel Conquers the Dragon Emperor, Maggie Lumiere Magical Girls Inc., Demon Lord 2099, and Can a Boy-Girl Friendship Survive? Basically, to those of you who think they were working on One Punch Man since 2022, they weren't. Trust me, they weren't. So what was the point of all that? Why did I go full animation nerd on you for 5 minutes straight? Well, besides all of that being stuff I personally find interesting and worth sharing, it gives us an idea of what the higher-ups at various stages of production did to make sure One Punch Man Season 3 looks good. That being absolutely f***ing nothing. The Fujishiro line was producing a ton of anime up until very recently, releasing 4 entire shows in the fall of last year and another one in the spring of this year. That's quite absurd and doesn't bode well for One Punch Man Season 3, obviously. So you might be wondering, what does the production timeline of One Punch Man Season 3 look like? Well, the best I can do is guess, because here's the thing about anime productions, for outsiders like me it's very difficult to know the production timeline of a show with complete certainty. Usually we either have to rely on particularly loose-lipped staff members, a rarity, or we need to know someone who works on the stuff personally, which is not the case for me here. Point is, all I can do is guess, so buckle up for some good old-fashioned detective stuff. Disclaimer, I'm probably incorrect about all of this. The second pre-animated trailer for One Punch Man Season 3 was released in the month of March this year, around 7 months back, remember that? This of course implies that the team had no actual footage to show around that time. Besides the PV, the only real source of information we have is the aforementioned interview published on the studio website back in the month of March 2025. In those interviews, animation producer Fujishiro said that the preparations for One Punch Man Season 3 were well underway. Preparations, or Jumbi, being a word that implies that the show was still in its pre-production stage at the time. What time, you may ask? When was this interview conducted? Well, I have a guess. In these interviews, Kaoru Suzuki said he was making his comments just before the final episode of Danmachi Season 5 finished production. Danmachi 5, as some of you may know, had its last 4 episodes delayed, and since these delayed episodes aired in the middle of the next season and not the start of it, we can safely assume that they were being worked on till the last minute. So when did this final episode air? March of 2025. Also in the same interview, Kosuke Matsuo said his line had finished producing Honey Lemon Soda, a show that finished airing, you guessed it, in the month of March 2025. When you consider all of that, it's not a stretch to say that this interview was probably conducted in the month of March this year, and if that's true, that means One Punch Man Season 3 was probably in its pre-production phase at the time, which is not good. That means Season 3 had, at best, a production window of around 7 months, a figure that's eerily similar to the second season. Moving on, as some of you may know, the two resources crucial to a show's quality are time and talent, and as I just demonstrated, the time aspect of that equation is probably a lost cause. But what about the other half? What about the talent component? Well, let's talk about the staff behind One Punch Man Season 3, because despite the plethora of videos I've made about this season, I've never actually gone over the staff, surprisingly enough. Although that's not exactly my fault, since for the longest time we just didn't know. Anyway, let's go over the staff. The show is being directed by Shinpei Nagai, a director who's not all that experienced when it comes to action, so does that mean we're cooked? Probably not. Nagai, based on what I've heard, is an extremely efficient director. He draws storyboards at a pace several times faster than his contemporaries, a quality of his that'll probably be very useful given how strapped for time this project is. Also worth mentioning, Nagai is interested and has experience in utilizing 3D animation, something that can help the team save a lot of time and bring those large-scale fights from the manga to life in an efficient manner. I just hope they can reassemble the same CGI team as Season 2, which they probably can. The studio in charge of the CGI back in Season 2 was Studio Moe, and that studio and Atsushi Fujishiro's line co-produced an anime recently. Unfortunately, despite all of that, Nagai's abilities as a director will be restricted. Even if he's secretly a masterful action director, he won't get to demonstrate those abilities in a production as scuffed as this one. It's a shame, really. One Punch Man is easily the biggest, most commercially significant production Nagai has been in charge of, but unfortunately he won't get to demonstrate what he's truly capable of, which is tragic. Besides him, the two new character designers, Ryosuke Shirakawa and Shinjiro Kuroda, are competent animators. Shirakawa in particular is an ex-KyoAni guy. Also worth mentioning, Sakura
Murakami
is now the new art director and Yuki Hirose is the new director of photography. Both those departments left a lot to be desired in season 2, but things do look a lot better this time around, mainly because those god-awful metal textures are now gone. Animation-wise, the only two guys we know for certain will be involved are ace-action animator Kenichiro Aoki and effects animator Kazunori Ozawa. Amazing names to have on your roster, yes, but ultimately they'll need a lot more to create a product that does justice to the IP. Overall, I think Season 3 will be a decent looking show in a vacuum, Season 2 was as well, but I highly doubt it'll live up to the sky-high expectations fans of the IP have. Also, I think this season will at the very least look marginally better than Season 2. I feel like the team has a stronger sense of aesthetic this time around and they are willing to try out new things, which is good. Sadly, that's all I can say for now. We have to sit and wait for the actual episodes, fingers crossed. And that's it. A special thanks to Nude03, Pawel and Amir for becoming tier 3 members, and until next time.